Welcome back to Square Off. Did Governor Doug Ducey take Valley mayors for a ride? Ducey hit the brakes on a 20-year-old funding source for major road and transit projects that help us get around more easily. Now those mayors, Republican and Democratic, are saying they were blindsided by the governor. One of the leading critics is Republican Mesa Mayor John Giles. He is here to tell us what happened and what's at stake for people who need to get around in the valley. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you, Bram.
I have to say, I've never seen you this upset on Twitter with your reaction to what happened. But let's take a step back and just give viewers some of the backstory, because this is a tax they probably don't even know about.
Sure.
It helps pay for our roads and mass transit.
Sure. I mean, we could go way back on this. I mean, when
not too far back. Just, what is Prop 400 and why was it, in play?
What is Prop 400 takes us back 20 years, because 20 years ago we did not, we all have gripes about our transportation system, and trust me, I travel on the US 60 on a daily basis, and so there's plenty to complain about. But 20 years ago it was far worse than this, and so the voters of Maricopa County approved a half-cent sales tax that would augment our resources as a region to build freeways and transit and arterial streets so that we could elevate the quality of our transportation system. That's been a huge success. If you look at all of the economic development successes that we've had as a region over the last 20 years, every one of them can be tied in one way or another to the projects that were funded by Proposition 400. So it's something we're very proud of. Unfortunately, it expires at the end of 2025. We're continuing to grow. We need that infrastructure investment now even more than ever.
What is the sales tax? How much am I paying on purchases?
It's a half a cent.
Half a penny.
So when you fill up your tank with $100, which we do all too often now, it's 50 cents.
And that's it. And so why is it an issue, or was it an issue in this past legislature?
Sure. Well, the process to develop a new regional transportation plan was assigned by the legislature to the Transportation Policy Committee that's part of MAG, and so that includes not just mayors and local elected officials, but all the other stakeholders, folks from industry, folks from other regions. They all came in, and over the course of years, at least a couple of years, we came up with a balanced plan. A lot of projects didn't make the cut. I mean, we could have asked for an increase in that tax, and still, I mean, we got 20 pounds of flour in a 10-pound sack here. So there was a lot of vetting, a lot of compromises that went through to come up with this plan. That's now, it needs voter approval, but in Maricopa County, we have to get the legislature and the governor to first allow us to then go to our voters.
And the legislature approved. They said, okay. And I think the vote was bipartisan.
Yes. Yes.
And so they said, okay.
Right.
And then it goes to the governor.
Right.
And he vetoed it in a very long veto message last week.
Right. This had a unanimous approval at the regional level, which it was a remarkable. And then it won bipartisan support at the legislature. We were blindsided by the governor not participating in that process for years, but then at the end of the process, coming in and throwing cold water on it.
And so the governor said the bill wasn't transparent, the spending wasn't transparent, and the sales tax represented a, quote, tax burden on Arizonans at a time of high inflation. What's your response to that?
That can't be the real reason, because transparency, this again was vetted over the course of years at a regional level, and then it went through both the House and the Senate with hearings. There was a tremendous amount of involvement from a large group of people. There's not a semicolon in this legislation that wasn't scrutinized by people all over the state. So it's as transparent as anything that's happened in the state forever. On the subject of the inflation, I think the way you fight inflation, again, this is not a tax that's going to remain in place until 2026. So whatever the economic situation is now is probably going to be very different than what's happening in 2026. But I think the way you hedge against inflation is, and particularly gas prices, is you have a strong transportation infrastructure. That's going to continue to allow the economic growth that we want to occur, and it's going to, frankly, have less cars on the road.
And so I want to give viewers a sense of the reaction to the governor's veto. You had a Twitter thread. You called it misguided. Pretty tough words from Mayor John Giles, usually very moderate. Here's Chuck Coughlin, a longtime capital consultant who lobbied for the bill, so he had an interest in it. He told the Yellow Sheet, quote, "I've never felt more betrayed in my life, and I don't believe he ever intended to sign the bill." Chuck's seen a lot in his time at the Capitol, so that's saying a lot. Do you agree with that he didn't intend to sign this?
I don't pretend to be privy to the inner workings of Governor Ducey's office, so I can't speak to that. But I can tell you that I have reached out on multiple occasions to the governor and to his staff, never received any indication that this was going to happen, including hours before this happened. I was totally surprised by it.
Hours before?
Yes, sir.
Hours before. Okay, folks are wondering, so what happens next?
Yeah. Well, we do need to speak up now. We can't just let this slide, even though this is something that might only impact us years from now, because the transportation, these big transportation projects, they are years in the pipeline, and you can't put things on hold for 2 years and not fall very far behind where you need to be. So there are lots of very strategically important transportation projects. Talk to the folks in the West Valley about how they feel about State Route 30. And if you've driven back from California anytime in the last few years, you know you're sitting in a parking lot on the freeway in between 18-wheel vehicles. You can take that across the state. And over in the East Valley, SR 24, talk to folks who live in Queen Creek and Gilbert and East Mesa, and they're having a very similar experience. So, and the other projects that are in Prop 400 include additional lanes and widening of the 202, the 10, the 60. There's not a place that you live in Maricopa County that's not impacted by this plan. That plan is now frozen for at least a couple of years. And what we need to be doing for the next couple of years is land acquisition, engineering, all of the things that will allow, and once this vote is passed, we can start bonding against that money and starting some of these projects, far sooner than 2 years.
So it sounds like you have 15 seconds left. This goes to the next governor and legislature.
The next governor is going to have to fix this, and the next legislature. So that's why we need to elevate this issue, make sure that the voters understand that they need to hold their elected officials responsible for this.
Mayor John Giles, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bram.